She waited 1 hour, then 2. Her coffee turned cold, her hope slowly fading with every passing minute. Emily sat by the window, watching strangers walk in and out, each time thinking, maybe this is him. But he never came. Or at least, that's what she believed. Just when she finally stood up to leave, heart heavy, eyes holding back tears, the cafe door suddenly opened. A man rushed in, breathless, soaked in rain, and looking straight at her like he had been searching for her all along. But what shocked her wasn't just that he was late, it was why he was late. Because the truth behind those 2 hours would change everything she believed about love, people, and second chances. If you believe in kindness and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because this story will stay with you forever. The cafe lights had already begun to dim when she checked her phone for the 10th time, her fingers trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the slow, creeping realization that she might have been forgotten. 2 hours. 2 full hours of waiting, hoping, and silently defending someone she had never even met. Emily Carter sat alone by the window, her untouched coffee now cold, her reflection staring back at her like a quiet accusation. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the glass, each drop echoing the same question in her mind. Why do you keep doing this to yourself? If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the most unexpected moments can change everything. Emily had almost canceled the date earlier that afternoon. She had stared at her phone for nearly an hour, rereading the message from a friend who insisted this man was different. But she had heard that before. After years of failed relationships, broken promises, and quiet disappointments, she had built walls around her heart, walls so high that even she struggled to see over them. Yet something made her come. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was hope she refused to admit she still carried. Or maybe it was the simple desire to believe that somewhere out there, someone could prove her wrong. She had arrived early, dressed in a soft blue sweater and simple jeans, not wanting to look like she was trying too hard. She had chosen the table by the window, imagining how it would feel to laugh with someone, to share stories, to feel seen again. For the first 20 minutes, she had smiled every time the cafe door opened. After an hour, she stopped looking up. After 2 hours, she stopped pretending. The waiter had already come by twice, offering polite sympathy disguised as casual service. The second time, she forced a smile and ordered another coffee just to justify her presence. She didn't want to be the girl who got stood up, not again. Because this wasn't the first time. 2 years ago, she had trusted someone completely, only to watch him walk away without explanation. No closure, no goodbye, just silence. That silence had followed her ever since, whispering doubts into every new beginning. And now here she was again, waiting, hoping, breaking just a little more. Emily finally reached for her bag, her movements slow, heavy. The decision to leave felt like surrender, but staying felt worse. She stood up, placing cash on the table, her chest tightening as she prepared to walk out, not just of the cafe, but of yet another disappointment. But just as she turned toward the door, it opened, and everything changed. A man stepped inside, slightly out of breath, his hair damp from the rain. He paused near the entrance, scanning the room with an intensity that didn't match the casual nature of a blind date. His eyes moved quickly, almost urgently, as if searching for something or someone he couldn't afford to miss. For a moment, she didn't think it was him, because this man didn't look like someone who would keep a person waiting for 2 hours. There was something different about him, something real. He spotted her, and in that instant, something passed across his face, relief, guilt, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. He walked toward her, each step steady but filled with an unspoken weight. Emily's heart began to race, not with excitement, but confusion, because this wasn't how it was supposed to go. Not like this, not after 2 hours, not after everything she had already told herself about him. He stopped in front of her, his expression sincere, almost painfully so. There were no excuses in his eyes, no arrogance, no indifference, only honesty. And that was what unsettled her the most, because for the first time in a long time, she didn't know what to feel.
Emily didn't sit back down immediately. Her body remained tense, caught between leaving and staying, between protecting herself and risking another disappointment. The man in front of her wasn't what she expected, and somehow that made everything more complicated. He wasn't polished or overly confident. There was no rehearsed charm, no careless smile meant to smooth things over. Instead, he carried something heavier, something that showed in the way his shoulders slightly slumped, in the way he held his breath as if bracing for rejection. His name was Daniel, and the first thing she noticed was that he didn't try to interrupt her silence. He didn't rush into explanations or apologies. He simply stood there, waiting, not demanding forgiveness, but hoping for a chance. That alone made her hesitate. Because in a world where people often spoke too much and meant too little, his quiet felt different. Emily slowly sat back down, not because she had already forgiven him, but because she needed to understand. She needed to know why someone would make her wait for 2 hours and still walk in like this, as if the story wasn't over yet. Daniel finally spoke, but his voice was low, steady, and filled with something she hadn't expected, regret that didn't feel performative. He explained that he hadn't planned to be late. In fact, he had left early, wanting to make a good impression. He had even imagined arriving before her, rehearsing how he would greet her, how he would break the awkwardness of a blind date with something simple and kind. But life had other plans. On his way to the café, he had witnessed a car accident at a busy intersection. It wasn't minor. It wasn't something he could ignore. A car had skidded on the wet road, crashing into another vehicle, leaving one driver injured and alone in the chaos of rain, panic, and passing strangers who hesitated to get involved. Daniel didn't hesitate. He had stopped. He had called for help, and when he saw that no one else was stepping forward, he stayed. He stayed with the injured man, holding his hand, keeping him conscious, speaking to him through the pain while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Minutes turned into an hour. The rain didn't stop, the tension didn't ease, and Daniel didn't leave. Because in that moment, being late for a date didn't matter. Being human did. Emily listened without interrupting, her emotions shifting with every word. At first, there was doubt, because she had heard excuses before, but something in his voice made it impossible to dismiss. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't exaggerated, it was simple, grounded, and painfully real. He even showed her the faint stains of blood on his sleeve, now partially washed away by the rain, but still visible enough to tell a story no words could fully capture. And suddenly, the 2 hours didn't feel the same anymore. They weren't empty, they weren't careless, they were filled with something she hadn't expected: compassion. Emily felt a quiet shift inside her, like a wall she had built long ago had developed a small, unexpected crack. She didn't fully trust him yet. Trust didn't return that easily, but she couldn't ignore what she was beginning to feel: respect. Daniel didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't try to turn himself into a hero. In fact, he seemed almost uncomfortable talking about it, as if he wished things had gone differently, as if he had wished he had been able to show up on time and be the man she expected. But maybe that was the point. He wasn't the man she expected. He was something else.
something real. Emily glanced at the chair across from her, then back at him. For a moment, the café around them faded into the background, the soft hum of conversations and clinking cups becoming distant noise. This moment felt important, because she realized something she hadn't in a long time. Sometimes the way a person shows up matters more than when they show up. She gestured for him to sit, and that simple action marked the beginning of something neither of them had planned. They talked for hours after that, not like strangers forcing conversation, but like two people slowly uncovering pieces of themselves they had hidden for too long. Daniel spoke about his work, his quiet life, his belief that small acts of kindness still mattered in a world that often overlooked them. Emily spoke less at first, still cautious, still guarding parts of her story. But as the night deepened, she found herself opening up, sharing fragments of her past, her disappointments, her fear of being let down again. And for the first time in years, she felt heard, not judged, not dismissed, just understood. When the café finally prepared to close, neither of them wanted to leave, because something unexpected had happened. A night that began with disappointment had turned into something neither of them could explain. Something fragile, something new, something worth exploring.
The rain had stopped by the time they stepped outside, leaving the streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. The world felt quieter, almost as if it had paused to acknowledge what had just unfolded between them. Emily walked beside Daniel in silence, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence she had feared at the start of the evening. It was calm, steady, filled with thoughts she was still trying to understand, because something inside her had changed, not completely, not instantly, but enough to make her question everything she thought she knew about second chances. They reached the corner where their paths would split, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain and possibility. Daniel finally turned to her, his expression sincere but uncertain, as if he didn't want to assume anything. He thanked her, not just for staying, but for listening, for giving him a chance he knew he hadn't earned in the usual way. Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something she hadn't expected to feel. She didn't see the man who made her wait. She saw the man who stopped for a stranger. And somehow that mattered more. She smiled, not the polite smile she had mastered over the years, but a real one, soft and unguarded. And in that moment she made a quiet decision, to stop letting her past decide her future, to stop assuming that every delay meant rejection, every mistake meant failure, to allow herself to believe, just a little, that good people still existed. Before the story ends, here's something special. Comment below and tell us, have you ever given someone a second chance that changed your life? Because sometimes those choices define who we become. Weeks turned into months. Emily and Daniel didn't rush things. They built something slowly, carefully, like two people who understood the value of patience. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic promises, just small, consistent moments of kindness, honesty, and presence. Daniel never tried to be perfect. He simply showed up. And that, Emily realized, was enough. One evening, months later, they found themselves walking past the same café where they had first met. The lights were warm, the atmosphere familiar, and the memory of that night lingered in the air like a quiet reminder of how unexpected life could be. Emily paused, looking through the window at the empty table where she had once sat alone, convinced she had been forgotten. She felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness for the version of herself who had almost given up, and gratitude for the moment she chose to stay. Because if she had left just a few minutes earlier, she would have missed everything.
Daniel stood beside her, unaware of the full weight of her thoughts, but somehow understanding enough to gently take her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it carried everything words couldn't express. And in that moment, Emily realized something profound. The right people don't always arrive on time, but when they do arrive, they change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, reminding us all that kindness, patience, and second chances still matter in this world. Because sometimes the most beautiful moments in life begin with the longest waits.